Hey guys, welcome to Pistons Talk Podcast. Hope you guys are having a great night. We're doing our day one reactions from NBA free agency. The Pistons made some moves, and there were some targets that re-signed with different teams. We're going to get into it. It's going to be a really fun episode. So if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit the like button if you can. It does help out the channel. If you're not subscribed, definitely subscribe. We're trying to get to 30,000 subscribers on YouTube. If you're listening on the audio side, we love and appreciate you guys as well. If you can, if you want, make sure to give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. But let's get into today's episode. So, right out the gate, the Detroit Pistons re-signed B-ball Paul Reed, 2 years, $11 million. This is coming from Shams Charania of ESPN. So they ink their third string center, Paul Reed. Now, look, I thought Paul Reed last year, for what it was worth, when his number was called, he produced. He didn't get to play a whole lot because Isaiah Stewart was the backup center for Jalen Duren. And in the minutes Paul Reed played, I thought he did a pretty good job. And when Stu was injured in the playoffs, he did his best to kind of contain Mitchell Robinson and Karl Anthony Towns. But it was just, the Knicks were just a really big team in the front court and gave him some difficulties. For what it's worth, I mean, it's a third string center that that's reliable. I'm sure JB is really comfortable with Paul Reed. Just me personally, I would have rather the Pistons maybe been a little bit more cheap in terms of a third string center, like getting a guy on a vet's minimum. I think they kind of overpaid Paul Reed a little bit, but that's just my opinion. Could they have got a cheaper center on the market? I'm not really entirely sure, but that's just my opinion on the signing. I was kind of like, okay, kind of like a meh signing, like, cool, Paul Reed's coming back. But that was one of the first moves that the Detroit Pistons did make in free agency. One of the second moves that we saw was they decided to go after Caris Levert. Now, there was reports that the Pistons were really zeroing on two players. It was Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who we'll talk about in a little bit, where he went, and Caris Levert. Now, they gave him a 2-year, $29 million contract. Now, for what it's worth, I'm not really a big fan of the Caris Levert signing as of right now. Like, free agency just started. It's 6 o'clock. 10:30 at night. I'm kind of like, okay, Caris Levert, cool. The Malik Beasley situation is, still up in the air. We really don't know what's going to happen with him in the long term. And I'll kind of, touch on him at the end of the podcast and why I think it kind of maybe put a fork in the road for the Detroit Pistons free agency plans. But I mean, if you're plugging in Caris Levert, they can play shooting guard and small forward. Cool. 14 points a game. My only thing with him is just like he's not always available and he does get hurt, which I think is somewhat of a red flag. But if he can stay healthy, I think he's at least a guy that can, initiate some offense off the bench in the pick and roll. Kind of an average 3-point shooter, average defender. I'm just not like really like pounding the table. Like, we got Caris Levert. Like, I know he's a Michigan guy. He's coming back home, but I wasn't really in love with the idea of Caris Levert when I saw the report. But I mean, they signed him for 2 years. And that's that. Like, I don't really have anything more to say. Maybe you guys can kind of talk me off a ledge if you are watching live on YouTube. I'm just not really in love with the signing. I know some of you guys reached out to me on Twitter. You're not really in love with the signing either. But I think the Malik thing kind of changed the Pistons' plans. In just my personal opinion, I could be wrong there. One of the other moves that we did see really early in free agency was Santi Aldama. So Santi Aldama actually re-signed with the Memphis Grizzlies. He signed a 3-year, $52 million deal. Now, that was a guy that I thought that the Detroit Pistons were really going to actually target. And the AAV on it is $17.5 million a year. Pistons had $17 million in cap space. So they would have had to, create a little bit more, whether it's trading someone. And I don't really think that they were really going to, possibly blow up the roster to go try to get into the restricted free agency with Santi Aldama and the Memphis Grizzlies. I think it's a good value for the Grizzlies as well. I thought they've had a pretty good free agency as well, re-signing Santi, locking down Jaren Jackson Jr., and I believe I saw Tyus Jones earlier tonight. So they're having a pretty decent free agency so far. But the Santi news, I was kind of like, damn, like I really wanted to stretch 5 or stretch 4 on this team, but maybe we're gonna have to wait until next year. Maybe they can possibly trade for somebody or sign someone in free agency. I just don't know. That was one player that I saw very early on in free agency. We touched on the Nikhil Alexander Walker when we were talking about Caris Levert, because that was a player that Mark Stein reported that the Pistons and the Hawks were the two teams that were the most interested in signing him. He got a deal from the Atlanta Hawks. Now, he got a 4-year deal for $64 million, and the Hawks did send, I think, a couple of draft picks. I saw that Brett Siegel from ClutchPoints.com reported to the Timberwolves. So 4 years, $64 million. The AAV is $16 million a year. I think Atlanta had a really good first day of free agency as well. They also signed Luke Kennard, which I don't know where they're getting all this money from, but they got Luke Kennard, Nikhil Alexander Walker. They traded for Kristaps Porzingis. They're having a pretty good offseason as well. They're improving their roster in the Eastern Conference, which I expect Atlanta to be, a much improved team as well. But I mean, Nikhil Alexander Walker, I kind of was opening up to the idea of going after him and signing him as a Piston fan, because I didn't really know what was going to happen going into free agency. And I thought if you got a plus defender like him, it would, help out your defense, but you're going to have to cross him off the list as well as Santi Aldama. So he's going to the Atlanta Hawks, which I was like, man, that sucks. It really does. We did see Dennis Schroeder as well. Signed with the Kings. Now, this is where it kind of gets interesting. It was reported by The Athletic. Fred Katz, I believe, was the journalist that reported it, and he's a very well-respected journalist. And he stated that the Kings did sign him. Now, it hasn't been official, which makes you kind of believe, could it be a sign-and-trade opportunity with the Detroit Pistons and the Sacramento Kings? The Pistons did have Dennis's early bird rights, which there could be a sign and trade situation. And I was scrolling the timeline on Twitter, and this isn't official. This is just what people are speculating and talking about, is could there be a sign and trade situation with Dennis Schroeder for a Malik Monk? Because there were reports that Dennis, was looking for the full mid-level, around 14 million. That was a report that came from Mark Stein, and Jake Fisher that's what his market was gauging to be. So there could be a sign and trade situation with the Detroit Pistons and the Sacramento Kings, where maybe the Pistons possibly get a player in return from the Sacramento Kings, which I think would be really huge, because as of right now, I mean, maybe you bring Tim Hardaway Jr. back. I'm not really sure what he's asking for. The Malik Beasley situation, no one is even talking to him because of the investigation of the alleged gambling. So there's that. I mean, if the Pistons could get a Malik Monk, I think it would be a very big opportunity for them to get a player of his stature, really good, six man off the bench, can shoot threes, can score at all three levels, very athletic. I would love that if the Detroit Pistons. Don't really know how the Sacramento Kings feel about a Malik Monk. Some people in the Kings community have said that he's kind of the odd man out with the Zach LaVine trade and DeMar DeRozan and all those guys over there. But I mean, if the Pistons do eventually make a sign and trade deal with the Kings for Dennis Schroeder, that would be pretty exciting. I just don't know what's going to happen. It's day one of free agency. I'm sure we're going to get a bunch of more free agent signings, possible trades, and rumors heating up in the coming days. But I did want to end the podcast with this really short podcast, only around 10 to 15 minutes. I don't want to waste too much of you guys' time. The Malik Beasley situation, I really think you guys really screwed the Pistons' plans up because we got a report from Shams Charania yesterday that the Pistons were going to sign Malik to a 3-year, $42 million deal and bring him back. They re-signed Paul Reed. I honestly think they were really going to run it back and maybe add a piece or two, and keep building on what they had from last season, winning 44 games. I think as soon as this Malik Beasley allegations came out, they were not going to sit on their hands. They weren't going to wait to see whether Malik Beasley was innocent or guilty. We just saw this morning that Terry Rozier had a very similar situation to Malik Beasley of alleged gambling. It took up to 5 months for his name to get cleared. He just got cleared today. I don't know how long Malik Beasley's case is going to take. I don't want to speculate or anything like that. We really don't know. It could, be a week. It could be 5, 6, 7 months. We really don't know. And I think that's why they decided to, put all their eggs in a basket for Caris Levert for a 2-year deal, which I honestly think for Caris Levert, if it works out and he stays healthy, that's great. But if it doesn't, I think it's a movable contract that the Pistons could try to trade at the deadline. Like Caris Levert was involved in a trade for DeAndre Hunter when he was with the Cleveland Cavaliers, which DeAndre Hunter's a good player. I don't really know what his market is. I don't know if there's any, other teams in the NBA that were really pursuing Caris Levert at that price point that the Pistons offered him. But I just honestly think the Malik Beasley stuff just happened at just a really bad time, like right before free agency. I don't really know if the Pistons knew about these allegations right away. I don't know how ready Chaz Lanier is to honestly play and just, be a rotational player right off the bat. I'm going to have to wait to see how he looks in Summer League, and maybe there's more moves to be made throughout this free agency period, or trades to be made by Trajan Langdon in the front office and the Detroit Pistons. But honestly, I think it's wild, man. It's wild. Like the Caris Levert move, maybe he can prove me wrong. Maybe he can be healthy. Maybe he can be, that spark plug off the bench for the Detroit Pistons. Maybe they can add more 3-point shooting in free agency. I don't know. Maybe you can get Tim on a cheap deal. I think there's a lot of questions that I have in free agency. I think a lot of you guys have, questions and concerns as well. But that's day one so far. We'll keep you guys updated, throughout the free agency period and do short little podcasts like this. But yeah, day one of free agency for the Pistons. They re-signed B-Ball Paul. They went out and got Caris Levert, and they missed out on Santi Aldama. They missed out on Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I just saw a report that Gary Trent Jr. has signed a 2-year deal with the Milwaukee Bucks as I'm heading this podcast. That was a sharpshooter that I thought the Pistons could go after if they needed more 3-point shooting. But yeah, we're going to have to wait and see how this free agency period really shapes out for the Eastern Conference and the Detroit Pistons. But I will talk to you guys pretty soon. Hope you guys have a great night. Take care. And as always, go Pistons. Peace.